You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth. Hey! Spanning the continent to bring you the truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation. Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
Good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Thursday, December 3rd, 2015, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Cannabis Radio. Glad to have you here on our live broadcast. We are live here every weekday at 3 p.m. Pacific time for the next 2 hours, bringing you the best of news, interviews, music, comedy, opinion, analysis, data, polls, statistics, science, research, logic, reason, compassion, all by, for, and about the cannabis community. I'm Radical Russ Belville. Glad to have you here, and encouraging you also to check out the rest of the lineup on CannabisRadio.com. We've got the best shows in marijuana talk that you can find anywhere on the internet. So, coming up on today's show, all sorts of news to get to. At 5:30, we're going to do our regular Cops Say Legalized Drugs segment. Every other Thursday, we visit with a speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, the world's leading law enforcement organization advocating for the end of drug prohibition. And this is a clip that we've got from the Reform Conference that took place in Arlington, Virginia, right by the Pentagon, where LEAP's Diane Goldstein, a member of their board of directors, was on a panel on the militarization of police. And also on the panel was Patrisse Cullors, one of the co-founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And it got pretty heated on the panel. So we'll give you a listen to that, a little clip from that in our half-past segment, Cops Say Legalized Drugs. You can also pick up highlights and full panels from the Reform Conference up at my SoundCloud page, soundcloud.com/radicalruss. At the end of the show, we'll have time for a radical rant. As usual, we're going to take a look at the Pacific Northwest Cannabis Cafe bans and how stupid, counterproductive, hypocritical, and unjust they are. So stay tuned at the end of the show for that. We've also got on the show today in our drug war data mining, a terrible case of statistics manipulation being done by the American thinker to try to scare people into thinking that Colorado's crime rate has skyrocketed since marijuana legalization. We'll show you the shenanigans they're playing with the numbers in drug war data mining. That comes right after Behind the Headlines, and in Behind the Headlines today, there can be only one. There's only one initiative standing in Massachusetts. The Committee to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, the MPP-backed initiative, is the only one that has submitted enough signatures to possibly qualify for the 2016 election. We'll talk about that and the fallout from that in the state of Massachusetts in Behind the Headlines. That, of course, comes right after the headlines in our Cannabis Radio News. We'll give you the update on that Massachusetts legalization question. We also take a look at the electrical grid in the United States being sucked dry by marijuana consumers. We've got the Pennsylvania medical marijuana proposals finally getting some airtime and being amended, unfortunately, to be even more strict. We've also got a look at Canada, where the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have busted some medical marijuana dispensaries. We'll tell you where. And in Chicago, one of those cases that could swing the pendulum the other way, a video that's gone viral and has child endangerment and child protective services on the lips of all the newscasters. We'll show you what happened when we come back. You're listening to The Russ Belville Show on Cannabis Radio.
This is The Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The son of a Polish immigrant who grew up in a Brooklyn tenement, he went to public schools, then college, where the work of his life began, fighting injustice and inequality, speaking truth to power. He moved to Vermont, won election and praise as one of America's best mayors. In Congress, he stood up for working families and for principle, opposing the Iraq War, supporting veterans. Now he's taking on Wall Street and a corrupt political system, funded by over 1 million contributions, tackling climate change to create clean energy jobs, fighting for living wages, equal pay, and tuition-free public colleges.
People are sick and tired of establishment politics, and they want real change.
Bernie Sanders, husband, father, grandfather, an honest leader, building a movement with you to give us a future to believe in.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message.
Your connection to quality cannabis insurance services is spelled Kaercher. That's Karcher Insurance. We have worked with ventures like cannabis for over 60 years. We're proud to represent over 50 companies with tailor-made cannabis plans for owners just like you to insure your product, your plants, and your pursuits. Kaercher spells out their full-service insurance services, ranging from commercial to bonds, to personal, from life to health, and more. Contact the team at KarcherInsurance.com and let our experience work for you. That's Kaercher Insurance.com.
Contact Karen and the team at Karcher Insurance at 1-844-421-3560. That's 844-421-3560.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at cannabisradio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Thursday, December 3rd, 2015. A possible 2016 decision about marijuana legalization in Massachusetts got less complicated this week. Massachusetts voters had faced the prospect of answering 2 separate pro-legalization ballot questions next November, but only one group believes its question is still standing. The Committee to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol, or CRMLA, said Tuesday it had submitted enough signatures to the Secretary of State to advance in the long process of getting a proposed law in front of the voters. Meanwhile, the leader of Bay State Repeal, the group behind a competing ballot question, conceded Wednesday night that it had not gathered enough signatures. CRMLA, backed by the National Marijuana Policy Project, proposes a tightly regulated system, including a new state commission and an excise tax on pot sales. Bay State Repeal, led by longtime local activists, sought what it called the least restrictive laws possible, such as allowing most existing retailers to sell marijuana and dividing light oversight of the industry between several existing state agencies. As more states legalize marijuana in the U.S., pot cultivation is sucking up an ever-growing amount of energy from the grid. Since most of the legal weed is grown indoors, the pot industry burns through large quantities of electricity used to power lamps, ventilation systems, and air conditioning. A square foot of planting requires some 200 watts of electricity, about the same as a data center, according to a report this year found in the Columbia Journal of Environmental Law. The paper notes that marijuana plantations soak up at least 1% of the country's electricity at a cost of $6 billion a year. If all states legalized pot, the amount the industry spends on electricity could go up to $11 billion, High Country News notes. That's putting enough pressure on electric utilities that regulators discussed the issue at their annual meeting on November 11th in a session titled The Straight Dope on Energy and the Marijuana Industry. Pennsylvania medical marijuana proposals from State Representative Ron Marsico would limit the amount of THC, the main psychoactive ingredient in medical marijuana, and also reduce the number of producers and dispensers. Marsico's bill calls for dividing the state up into at least 3 regions and spreading out dispensaries based on population and the number of people with state-issued cards needed to obtain medical marijuana. The long-awaited and historic vote on whether to legalize medical marijuana in Pennsylvania could take place within the next 2 weeks. Senate Bill 3, which passed 40-7, has strong support from advocates, including parents of children with severe seizures. Marsico's amendment, which would replace much of Senate Bill 3, is nearly identical to it regarding the illnesses that could be treated with medical marijuana. They include cancer, HIV and AIDS, ALS, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, spinal cord damage resulting in spasticity, epilepsy and seizures, glaucoma, chronic pain, inflammatory bowel disease, and Crohn's disease. But Marsico's amendment would limit the amount of THC, the ingredient that causes a high, to 10% or less per dose. Senate Bill 3 has no such limit. In seeming defiance of the new government's intention to legalize marijuana, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have followed through on their threat to bust 3 medical marijuana dispensaries in British Columbia, and at least one is vowing to reopen. Quote, "It is unfortunate that the RCMP decided the best way to deal with the coming change in cannabis laws was to detain frontline clerks and attempt to prevent access of medical cannabis patients," end quote, reads a statement from Trees Dispensary released Tuesday evening. The Nanaimo Medical Marijuana Store said that the raid on their storefront, quote, "flies in the face of public opinion and the stance of our newly elected federal government," end quote. Chicago police are investigating a shocking case of child endangerment captured on video. A toddler appears to be smoking marijuana, and there is an adult encouraging him the whole time. Police were tipped off after the video was discovered on Facebook by community activist Andrew Holmes. It appears to show a young child in a diaper sitting in a chair while smoking a marijuana blunt as an adult off camera coaches him. The child in the video appears to be clearly dazed by the effects of the marijuana. Detectives from the Special Victims Unit at Area South Headquarters are actively pursuing the people in the video, and if found, the adult may face child endangerment charges. The Department of Children and Family Services will also be notified. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Thursday, December 3rd, 2015. I'm Russ Belville. Imagine life without taxes. Let New Era Certified Public Accountants, NewEraCPAs.com, handle your Cannabusiness 280E and tax strategy. Get your business prepared with New Era CPA's Cannabis Finance Bootcamp. NewEraCPAs.com, with years of experience in the industry, we are one of the nation's leading accounting firms for growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies from Washington to California. NewEraCPAs.com.
The Russ Belville Show. Chat is for friends 18 and older. We expect our chat to be civil, mature, and free from excessive profanity. If you don't like these rules, there are approximately 6 billion other chat rooms with lower standards that you can visit.
MJWellness.com, the largest medical marijuana community in the world. Connect with thousands of patients, doctors, industry leaders, and businesses through shared personal experiences along our worldwide network. Discover new therapies and benefits with content tailored to you. Come grow your network on MJWellness.com. You're not alone. Your wellness matters. Learn, live, and thrive. Check out MJWellness.com today.
Welcome back, everyone. Time for us to go behind the headlines. And today the headline is on how Massachusetts legalization is down to just Marijuana Policy Project's committee to campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol. Stephen Epstein from the grassroots Massachusetts legalization group Bay State Repeal announced via Facebook last night that the initiative petition for the 2016 ballot fell short of the required threshold of signatures. Epstein wrote, quote, "Thanks and gratitude to my friends who expended effort soliciting and delivering signatures of registered voters, you know who you are, for Bay State Repeal. Alas, our proposed law will not be introduced into the legislature as an initiative petition in January 2016, end quote. The same message was posted to Bay State Repeal's webpage under the heading, "Too many relied on too few." The initiative had been endorsed by Harvard professor emeritus and pioneering medical marijuana researcher Dr. Lester Grinspoon, the Massachusetts affiliate of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, aka MASCAN, and the Boston Globe newspaper. That leaves only the campaign to regulate marijuana like alcohol, or CRMLA, as a legalization option for Massachusetts. Last month, Marijuana Policy Project, or MPP, the organization sponsoring CRMLA, announced they had submitted more than 100,000 signatures of the 64,750 signatures required to make the ballot. The Globe, in its endorsement of Bay State repeal, derided the MPP-backed Crimla as a, quote, flawed proposal, end quote, that creates, quote, another industry ripe for special interest politics, end quote. While both initiatives proposed age limits of 21 years, home grows that must be locked and hidden, landlords that can ban home growing, and a system of taxed pot shops, the Globe dismissed Crimla for its, quote, caps on the number of growers, fees up to $15,000 for licenses to grow, and an arbitrary cap on possession, end quote, by limiting adults to just 1 ounce of marijuana in public and 10 ounces at home. Epstein now vows to defeat MPP's Crimla if it should make the ballot. Epstein told the Globe that he will, quote, use every skill in my power, end quote, to oppose the marijuana legalization initiative, which he called, quote, a bad law that supports crony capitalism, end quote. But other Massachusetts activists are more pragmatic. Bill Downing, chairman of MassCan NORML, the state affiliate, told the Globe that he personally supports Crimla and expects the board of MassCan to endorse the initiative. Massachusetts Crimla would legalize for adults 21 and older the possession of 1 ounce of marijuana flower, 5 grams of marijuana concentrate, and cultivation of 6 cannabis plants per adult with a limit of 12 per household, plus possession of 10 ounces of marijuana flower at the home. Commercially, marijuana would be produced by growers and sold at pot shops. It would be taxed at 3.75% excise tax, plus state and local sales taxes. Localities could also add up to 2% tax and ban marijuana establishments through a vote of the people. Crimla also extends protections to cannabis consumers. Child custody and visitation rights cannot be affected solely because a parent uses marijuana. Organ transplants and other medical procedures cannot be denied solely due to cannabis consumption. Massachusetts Crimla is equal to or better than the legalization that currently exists in 4 U.S. states. It would be foolish to reject this legalization initiative in 2016 on the promise that the group that just failed to gather signatures in a presidential election year will be able to produce something better for the ballot in the future. Don't pass up the chance to vote on marijuana legalization. Now, it's a bit of a path before we get the chance in Massachusetts. It goes before the legislature first. They can put it on the ballot. If they decide not to put it on the ballot, MPP has to go back and get another some 10,500 or so more signatures to have it put on the ballot. But when marijuana legalization makes the ballot, it is the duty of every cannabis consumer to vote for that legalization. You know our opponents will all be voting against that legalization. And 1 ounce plus 10 ounces at home and up to a dozen plants in the house is the best legalization in the United States so far. I tell you, folks, it gets a little frustrating having to repeat the same verse over and over again, election after election. Stoners against legalization in Arizona. Stoners against legalization in Massachusetts. Stoners against legalization in California. I'm sure I'll hear from some of them in Maine and Nevada, too. We could go 5 for 5 in 2016, people. The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
Arguing for the end of adult marijuana prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It is even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more in this edition of Drug War Data Mining. All right, welcome back, folks. In the Drug War Data Mines today, we take a look at just how the the drug warriors can skew the statistics when it comes to looking at marijuana and its effect. And the blog I want to point out here is one called The American Thinker. And in The American Thinker, they've got a graph here that shows a declining crime rate in Colorado from 2004 to 2012. And then this massively increasing crime rate after 2012, after marijuana was legalized. And so that is their evidence to show that marijuana legalization has caused crime to increase. This is their opening paragraph. They say, despite what the big pot lobbyists claim, the evidence is starting to mount that Colorado's experiment with legalized marijuana has led to increased crime in the state. According to the latest 2014 Crime in Colorado report by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the crime rate, based on arrest statistics, increased 9% from 2013 to 2014. But that is only part of the story. Looking back on the crime rate data from the overall preceding decade, the state's crime rate was declining rapidly from 2004 through 2012. Since 2012, the crime rate has increased more than 21%. What happened? The Colorado legislature passed bills regulating the manufacture, sale, and distribution and use of recreational marijuana. And during these past 2 years, as Colorado moved toward legalized marijuana, the statewide crime rate reversed a nearly decades-long trend downward and instead exploded upward. Okay, so we're all terrified, right? We've legalized marijuana, and the crime rate's gone up. Oh my God, the crime rate has gone up. It's terrifying how much the crime rate has gone up, except there's one big problem. I don't know if you caught it as I was reading through what they had to say, but I went and looked it up because you know me, I look shit up. And I looked up the Crime in Colorado report. And I went over to this thing, this page, Colorado statewide reported crimes. 2014, and it compares them to 2013. Now, in 2013, there were 172 reported homicides, only 150 in 2014. It actually went down 12.8%, and based on population, went down 15% for homicide. That's odd. Rapes were 2,903 in 2013. They were 2,961 in 2014, so they did go up. There were 58 more rapes, 2% actual change, a 0.4% change based on population, so negligible, statistically negligible. Robberies went down 5% based on population. Aggravated assaults, though, did go up 2.4%, and other assaults went up 5.3%. But burglary went down 7.9%, larceny went down 4.2%, auto theft is down 0.8%, and the total 2014 Colorado statewide reported crimes went down 2.5%. So I thought to myself, that's odd, because this blog here at the American Thinker says that the crime rate based on arrest statistics increased 9%. Oh, wait a minute. I'm looking at the reported crimes. You know how many crimes actually happened. What they're looking at is a separate page, the 2014 Colorado reported statewide arrests. Statewide arrests. Now, the statewide arrests went up by, look at there, 8.7%. That's enough to round it up to 9%. The arrests went up. Not the reported crimes. The reported crimes statewide, how many crimes actually got reported, went down. But cops caught more people. If anything, what this is showing us, American thinker, is that since we've legalized marijuana, we've freed the cops up to go after more of the violent criminals. They've actually been able to solve more crimes. They've actually been able to go after the bad guys and get them. This is just another example of people that are scouring through every possible report that might happen after marijuana has been legalized in an attempt to find something, anything, to hang their hat on as far as being able to prove that marijuana legalization has had this terrible effect. And what we are finding in Washington, in Colorado, and what we'll find in Oregon and Alaska as well, is that it has no effect on the crime rates, either rising them or lowering them. People were smoking marijuana, and the real crime that goes away is treating them like criminals. There's no doubt that crime has definitely gone down. So we've got to keep on this. And the blog there is American Thinker. Like I said, Colorado's crime rate was declining until they legalized pot, by Sierra Rain. Again, she's talking about the arrests, total arrests, not the total crimes reported. For example, on the total arrests page, you'll find 130 homicides, but on the reported homicides, there is 150. Rapes, 521 reported or arrested for, but 2,961 reported. Robberies, 945 arrested for, 3,031 reported.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio.
Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals, or at least they pay me to say that. A public service message from CannabisRadio.com and the Russ Belville Show.
Dr. Dabber, hurry! Its temperature is shooting past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's burning up.
I'm afraid for this little guy, it's just too late.
What caused the problem?
Only Dr. Dabber can maintain the perfect temperature for a smooth-tasting, slower burn. This standard vaporizer lost all of its health benefits, sending it up in smoke.
So you're telling me that most vapor pens burn so hot they produce smoke, not vapor?
Correct. Keep away from those standard vaporizer pens and turn to Dr. Dabber. Doctor's orders.
Less heat, more flavor.
One of the most disturbing elements of the Prohibition War is how it's made police the enemy of otherwise law-abiding cannabis consumers. Fortunately, one group of police officers knows the futility of prohibition and reaches out to educate the community and current law enforcement. Today, the Russ Belville Show visits with another speaker from Law Enforcement Against Prohibition with one clear message. Cops say legalize drugs.
Welcome back, everybody. And for today's Cops Say Legalize Drugs segment, we're going to go back to the Reform Conference that was held at the the Crystal Marriott in Arlington, Virginia. This was just a couple of weeks ago, right there in the shadow of the Pentagon, such that it is. It's not much of a shadow. It's not a tall building. But anyway, we were at the Marriott for the International Drug Policy Reform Conference, which happens every 2 years. Next conference is in Atlanta, Georgia, October 11th through 14th, 2017. Get your tickets while you can. Start planning for that. This panel featured Diane Goldstein from the Board of Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, speaking on the militarization of policing. Enjoy.
Based on what both of you all had said, and this idea of like this didn't happen by accident. We've been watching this happen over time, right? We've been paying into it. You know, when we think about our tax dollars and where they go, right? And these people that we pay to be our employees, because that's how we have to look at these political bodies, these folks that we elect, and the folks that they appoint. We are their supervisors, but we haven't been acting in that way. So I wanted to just run down 3 pieces of federal laws that kind of led the way and led the groundwork for all of what's going on right now in terms of militarization that we weren't paying attention to, that we weren't necessarily responding to the way that we should have, and that resulted in what we have today. In 1981, Congress passed the Military Cooperation with Civilian and Law Enforcement Act, which allowed law enforcement and military bodies to collaborate more, to train together, and to share information. That was number 1. Number 2, in 1990, the National Defense Authorization Act allowed for more equipment sharing between the military and law enforcement for use in counter-drug activities. 1997, another initiative led to the authorization of transfer of surplus military equipment for use in counter-narco activities, counter-terrorism activities, and to enhance officer safety. So this has been creeping for a long time. And in many ways, this is gonna sound like I'm coming from the left, but NWA straight out of Compton, and then telling us what police militarization looked like, and Ferguson showing us what it looked like. So it really goes to like speaking up and speaking out about all of this, about big government, small government, how to push back and make it smaller, because that's what you're talking about. We can push back and make it smaller, and we can handle this. I wanna thank all of these amazing panelists. Let's give them a hand. Weaving through all this stuff is, it can be a task. I want to open it up to questions from you all. If you raise your hand, I'll call on you, and then I'll repeat your questions. So, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic. All right. So, my name is Alex. I'm a public policy student at the Heller School of Brandeis University. And I just really want to, first of all, thank all of you. Secondly,
use the mic for the interpreter.
I'm going to do
that. Thank you very much.
I'm going to hold the mic because sometimes people do comments instead of questions.
So basically, in class, we were definitely talking about the development of the American political welfare state, and I just wanted to, speak or have the panelists speak on just the role of capitalism, not just in the drug war, but just before that, when farmers and domestic workers were kept out of the New Deal, and before that, when slaves kept the Southern economy alive, and the Northern resistance that happened after slavery. I just want to really speak to how long this policing has happened. Like, we're talking about how this isn't new, how the system is working exactly how it should be, but I really want to speak to the historical context that we're coming from. This is just a war on drugs or poverty. This has been a war on the other since the development of this country, so I just want to speak to that.
I'm happy to speak to that. I'm sure lots of my co-panelists have a little bit to say on that, but I think that I try to touch upon that a little bit when, during my comments around the ways that certain people are excluded from legitimate economies, right? And I think that that's, again, not an accident, right? That's by design, right? Capitalism is functioning exactly as it has been designed to function. And in that context, certain things are seen as valuable, certain people are seen as valuable, and certain people are not. LGBTQ youth of color who, are engaging in whatever they have to do to survive, that's not seen as valuable, and the police and the drug war has been put in place specifically to control that, specifically to eliminate that, and I think, capitalism is very central to all of that, right? It's, I think that policing has very often come to place of control and to kind of protect wealth and protect capital, right? And when we talk about public safety, or in New York City, when we talk about quality of life, I've got to give a shout out to Fierce, another LGBTQ youth of color organization in New York City that we work really closely with. They have a campaign on quality of life now called Quality of Life for Who, right? Like, whose quality of life increases when you are policing people for sleeping on the subway, right? Whose quality of life increases when you are policing people for picking at an advertisement on the train, right? Like, whose quality of life are you increasing when you do all of these things to make actually poor people's life really hard and to, serve as a source of revenue for a municipality when there's all of these people who are incredibly wealthy who are not contributing to the system in the ways that, poor folks are, in terms of even just the chunk, the proportionality of the income that goes towards paying fines so I think that they're actually quite connected, and I think that the drug war, as Amaya really pointed out, has often been served as a tool for law enforcement to protect the interests of the wealthy.
I'm just going to follow up on that just because I'm a libertarian, so I have to answer a question about capitalism, right? I would say that, if anything, the drug war and the current state of our criminal justice system, it's the ultimate exertion of state power. State power. It's not, capitalism isn't driving, the drug war. It's the state. It's politicians. It's people who are supposed to represent us. Corporations aren't the ones who are setting policies regards to drug enforcement. They're not the ones. All right, well, Well, okay, maybe that's not very popular in this room, but I mean, I encourage all of you to examine where these laws are coming from. I mean, who creates laws? It's lawmakers. Who is giving out military equipment to our police officers? It's the state. So, I would like to
Cassandra Myers comments.
First, I have to say I totally disagree. I mean, behind lawmakers, there are huge corporations doing lobbying with a lot of I would like to say that in Latin America, this goes back to colonialism, and it's the exploitation of natural resources. And it's indigenous communities who are still being most affected because they still own the lands where these resources are, and the drug war is helping transnational corporations take them out of their community so they can make a whole lot of money. So the drug war is financed and is backed up by capitalism and by corporations.
She wants to.
Isn't that called fascism? Not capitalism? That's fascism. Corporatism and government is fascism.
That's what we are now.
Did you have a question? Well, I think one of the things we need to really go back from a policing function is that I'm like a little bit more libertarian in my tendencies, but what we have to do is we have to strip the laws. Like what you're saying over there is exactly how we change communities, because if you go back to the history of law enforcement, you have to understand law enforcement became this autocratic model when we became urbanized, when we stopped taking care of ourselves. Cops don't want to answer the door on loud noise call. People are just afraid to knock on their neighbor's door and say, hey, can we talk about it? Would you mind being respectful? We have to strip authority and power. We need politicians to understand that law enforcement is not the regulatory police. We should not be funding law enforcement budgets taking money away from civil asset forfeiture. In California, I was part of a big push on a civil asset forfeiture bill. You know, the cops really pushed back. The criminal justice professional should not be allowed to lobby. It's unethical. Yeah, that's right. Okay? Law enforcement at one time in our society was told, this is what I was trained, we don't make the laws. It's not our role to influence lawmakers. It's not our role to get into the legislative policy wonk and do those things. Our job is to enforce the properly constitutionally mandated laws, and that's a big part of the issue. We are not training police officers in the fashion to support our Constitution. And we just, you know, we need to do a combination of different things. You know, we're not going to end police departments. You know, we need to change them. We need to change the dynamics. We need to be collaborators and stakeholders with you and say, how do we reduce law enforcement contact in our communities? And then when we go into the policy wonk is, hey, we have too many laws.
Question over here.
So, you know, it's such a combination, it's a very complex combination, but law enforcement should not be out doing what they're doing.
Well, I want to just point out something. You said that we have to stay away from cops. There's no way that us as individuals meeting LGBT youth of color, you cannot stay away from cops. It's hard to stay away from cops, actually. Like, I live on a block where there's like a precinct just right next to my doorstep. And it's hard for us being transgender, you know, going into the field of sex working, you know, I'm a former sex worker myself, and to engage in such acts for survival. So it's kind of hard to like not be in that predicament where you don't want to be. And so, you know, the government is not always there. They don't see it. They see it as a broader picture of sales. And so you can never ever trust.
Sex work is the new war on drugs.
Yeah,
we shouldn't have sex crimes laws either.
Go ahead, Rachel.
Yeah.
You're cool, you got to ask what you wanted to ask.
No, it's okay. I was going to ask you a question, but...
Go ahead, ask it.
No, because I was just saying, like, you was talking about, like, I understand with the Latino and the whole criminal justice system out there in New York. Our criminal justice system is very heinous, especially the cis precinct out there in the village, how they sexually harass the LGBT community and how they come and shut us down. They tie us on benches, on poles, and they fill us up. They take off our bras in front of men, which is not actually really cool to do, and it's not on your consent. You know what I'm saying? So how can we, as a community, as a nation, how can we support that and try to like find ways that even though this drug is our survival, in a way, we do have to take drugs when we sex work. You know, we do have to have these drugs to sell. This is our money we're making. This is something that we'll have like a little bit of chunk change in our pockets. At least I know that I'm going to eat at the end of the day. You understand? Why is that becoming a problem? It's becoming an issue to all our Latinas, or our trans folks, our black citizens, and it's crazy. So how can we really change that without changing the criminal justice?
Well, first I just want to really appreciate your comment. I think it raises all kind of great issues and draws off of a lot of what's been said on the panel. For the sake of clarity, I wasn't suggesting that it's easy to stay away from the cops. I live in the world. I know that it is not easy to stay away from the cops, right? And, you know, I used to live in New York, so I know what it is to try to stay away from those cops. That being said, I don't think it's your individual responsibility to stay away from the cops. I think it is our collective responsibility to reduce the contact that cops get to have with anybody, right? I actually don't think it is possible to address the issues that you're raising without fundamentally changing the criminal justice system.
Correct.
And, you know, frankly, you know, I'm not necessarily for small government, Shakira. I'm not suggesting that there's not a role for the state. I actually think there is a role for a state. You know, and I don't necessarily think that it's the craziest dream in the entire world to start taking steps now to shrink the prison industrial complex to elimination. I want cops to be out of business. I think that's a fine dream, right? Is that our current reality? No. But do I think all of us can take some steps right now today to move in that direction? Absolutely.
A world without police. That was one of the quotes that also came from that panel. Imagining a world without police, which it's kind of difficult for me to imagine. And if you stay tuned in hour 2, I'll play the closing of that panel where I asked the question, what would that world without police look like? I think I've seen it. It's a movie called The Purge. You listen to the Russ Belville Show. We'll be back. The Radical Rant is next. We're taking a look at Pacific Northwest Cannabis Cafe bans.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
You know Herb Thrasher from the Herb Thrasher Flower Hour. Now get ready for Herb Age Designs for the proud cannabis consumer. Herb Age Designs, lifestyle gear for the 420 friendly. Herb Age Designs, we've got Frisbee golf discs and durable hemp gear. Herb Age Designs, we've got shot glasses, drinking glasses, coffee mugs, and beer cozies. Check us out on Facebook and online at herbagedesigns.com. And follow Herb Age and Herb Thrasher on Twitter.
Marijuana is not addictive, but listening to the Russ Belville Show is.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping ganjapreneurs grow.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
Imagine you lived in a state where you couldn't drink a beer with your buddies out on the town. No beer drinking with you and your friends. Now, it's not that beer is illegal. You can go to a store and buy beer. Just 1 6-pack of beer, but you can still do it. You can go buy some beer. But you can't drink beer in the store, of course. In fact, you can't drink beer out in public at all. You can't order beer in a restaurant because none of the restaurants will serve beer. You can't even get beer at a bar because no bars exist. Now, you can buy your 1 6-pack of beer at the store, and then you can take it home. And with the curtains drawn so the public cannot see you, you can drink your beer. But visitors from out of town cannot take their beer from the store to their hotel room because hotels ban beer drinking. You cannot even bring your beer to a private membership-only club serviced by volunteers because that's somehow defined as drinking in public, and beer may only be consumed in private. Man, you'd think you'd woken up in Utah. But even the Beehive State's notoriously strict alcohol laws aren't that draconian. Even before they were improved and people had to actually join private clubs to go to a bar and drink beer. That, however, is the exact scenario facing legal cannabis consumers in the Pacific Northwest. Just switch marijuana for beer. The 6-pack is the quarter ounce in Oregon. Now, in 2016, that will eventually increase to a case of beer. We'll be able to buy a full ounce in Oregon, and that's what's currently allowed in Washington as well. Of course, nobody in either of those states is limited to buying just a case of beer. You can buy kegs, multiple kegs of beer if you like, but with marijuana, we have to have a limit on how much you can buy. I reported yesterday how the Oregon Health Authority has informed the world-famous Cannabis Cafe here in Portland and other private volunteer-run bring-your-own-cannabis clubs that recent amendments to the Oregon Clean Air Act forbid the indoor smoking or vaporization of cannabinoids. The daily fines for violations can be up to $500 per day. However, within those same clean air regulations are exceptions for smoke shops that allow for the sampling of tobacco products by smoking or vaporization, and cigar bars with capacity of up to 40 people that allow for the smoking of cigars. The regulations require adequate ventilation of those premises. But smoking of tobacco will be allowed in the same regulations that ban the vaporization of cannabinoids. And this follows Washington State. Their legislature instituted a Class C felony for, quote, any club, association, or other business for profit or otherwise that conducts or maintains a premises for the primary or incidental purpose of providing a location where members or other persons may keep or consume marijuana on the premises. So, the foundation of these Clean Air Acts in all these various states has always been the notion that we need to protect the public from the known harms of secondhand marijuana smoke, or secondhand tobacco smoke, excuse me. And that is been demonstrated by numerous scientific studies. We know secondhand tobacco smoke is harmful. But now, Oregon's Act has been amended to presume that not just secondhand marijuana smoke, but also secondhand cannabinoid vapors can, quote, cause cancer and other chronic diseases such as heart disease, asthma, and bronchitis, end quote. Well, folks, there's just no science to back up those assertions. Oregon's Clean Air Amendments and Washington's Marijuana Club felony are simply ways to enforce bigotry against cannabis consumers. That's it. It has nothing to do with keeping us safe. And they're counterproductive as well. In Denver, Colorado, which also bans marijuana clubs, citations for public consumption rose 471%. In Seattle, Washington, the city attorney Pete Holmes says that he believes public consumption tickets have risen in his city as well. Wow, what a surprise. When adults have no legal place to exercise their rights to marijuana smoking and free assembly, they do both anyway. It is rank hypocrisy to ban cannabis vaporization in cannabis clubs on clean air grounds, while allowing tobacco smoking in a smoke shop. It's rank bigotry to ban public houses where marijuana consumers can gather, while allowing public houses serving alcohol that's proven to be far more harmful to society. A state that can handle bars and taverns without mandatory breathalyzer valet parking can handle a bring-your-own buds cannabis cafe. It's also behind the times and not very smart economically for Washington State and Oregon to be moving forward with these bans on public marijuana consumption. Alaska just voted to allow on-site consumption in their cannabis stores. The 2016 legalization initiatives in Maine, Massachusetts, and California all allow for some sort of on-site public consumption. Soon, tourists that are looking for that vacation on a rugged coast where pot is legal will be able to choose Maine, where pot lounges are legal, over Washington, where they are not. Visitors interested in smoking herb with some clam chowder from the Oregon coast might decide to get chowder in Boston instead, where the pot lounges are legal. And with California on the cusp of having legalization that allows for legal cannabis consumption by members of the public in a public house sort of situation, all of the West Coast tourist dollars for cannabis consumers are going to flow to California even more than they already would. Washington and Oregon have an amazing opportunity to be the pot smoking region of the United States, to be the cannabis consumer destination. The Oregon coast alone offers enough tourism opportunities. Add to that the skiing in Central Oregon, the woods and the hunting and the fishing and all the outdoor opportunities, the sailboarding out there on the Columbia Gorge. We are just cutting our own throats economically here in the Pacific Northwest if we don't find a way to allow the tourists who come to our state a way to enjoy something that's special about our state. The ability to consume cannabis without any repercussions. That's all the time we got here for hour one, but stay tuned on CannabisRadio.com for hour two. Toker Talk Radio is coming up next. We'll talk a little bit more about that video in Chicago of the little kid puffing a blunt. Also, George Zimmerman news. Oh my God. No, he's not dead. That's the only story I want to report, but he's at it again. And updates on the San Bernardino shooting. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at RadicalRuss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it.